So we go back to, where's modules? There it is. Week 7. Exercise 7 is to draft a plan from a raster image. And so it should go kind of step by step with what's in your textbook. So it'll be helpful to follow along with there. But here's what our end result is going to be. We are going to take this image here, and we're going to draft over it, bring up the walls, cut out the doors, and that'll be the assignment. How are you guys? Okay. So the very first thing we need to do is download this raster file, this PNG, and we're going to import it into our SketchUp model. So go ahead and click that little download button if you're following along with me. And we're going to import it into your SketchUp model using File Import, SketchUp. So up on your menu bar, go to File, and down to Import. And it's going to ask you to go find the file that you want. Mine is the download that I just had, and then hit Import. And so you'll see it following along here with your cursor. We're going to start at the origin, because that's just our best practice, is to stay near the origin. So click once to define that starting point, and then start to move your cursor over, and it'll start to kind of move with your cursor here. Just go ahead and click to place it, and then we'll get to scaling it after. So don't worry about trying to get it to a right size just yet. Okay. So we are going to resize this image to make sure that it is to scale. So this image, I'm just going to tell you, the floor plan is 20 feet by 20 feet, so that's what we're going to use as kind of our reference. So to resize the image, you're going to grab your tape measure tool. We're on step number 2 now. Grab your tape measure tool or hit T on your keyboard. You will click the tape measure tool on one end of a known dimension. So I just told everyone that one side of our floor plan is 20 feet. So I'm going to click starting just in a corner here. You'll notice with images, the inference engine doesn't work. It's not going to be able to really tell you where this intersection is because it's just an image. It's not actual lines. So don't worry about being super exact, but get it as close as you can. So just start on your corner there. Just click once. And then we're going to go click the other end of that known dimension. So I'm going to grab up here, go find that corner. I'm going to click here. And then type 20 feet, enter. It's asking you if you want to resize the model. And remember that this resizes everything. It's not just whatever you've just used as kind of your reference. It'll resize the entire model. However, we did talk about the workaround for that would be to group your objects and then resize within that group. Right now, it's not really a problem for us because the image is the only thing inside of our model. And so, yes, we do want to resize the model. Just be aware that this resizes everything. So I'm going to say yes. And then that should have automatically adjusted. And now if I were to go try and measure this, again, I can't be super exact with this image, but it looks like it did resize it to be about 20 feet long. Okay, step 3 is that we're going to turn the raster file into a group. This is gonna make it a little bit easier to work with because SketchUp kind of sees this as a face. If I were to go in here and start modeling off of this, it'll kind of get stuck to the image. So it's best to explode everything out and then make it a group. So we're just going to use that explode function that we just learned. Click your image, right click, and explode. And you'll see at first, before I explode, it tells me in my entity info that that it's an image and there's one in the model. But whenever I explode this, it actually turns it into 5 entities. So it turns it into kind of like a face and 4 edges. And then once we have reduced that to just the face and the 4 edges, go ahead and grab it all, right click, and make it a group. I think this helps just kind of with how images slow down your model. If you explode it and then turn it into a group, SketchUp is recognizing it more as those edges and a face rather than kind of that raster image that bogs down the model. Alright, step 4 is that we're going to start to trace the plan's perimeter. So using the pencil tool, we will draw parallel lines on the axes, clicking at each corner. So we're just doing the perimeter of the plan first. And you'll use the inference engine to kind of match your line lengths, and it'll help you to figure out your different cues. So let's go ahead and start. I'll grab my pencil tool. And I've told you that the plan is 20 feet by 20 feet, but you might not always know exactly what it is. Chances are when you're drafting from an image, it's not meant to be super accurate unless someone is giving you dimensions, just because we're not able to accurately find those intersections when it's just on an image. So since I know it's 20 by 20, I'm going to go ahead and make mine 20 by 20, but do know that it's very hard to make things exact when you're just modeling based off of an image. So I'm going to start near this corner, click once to start, and then you don't have to make yours the 20 by 20, the point of this exercise is not accuracy, it's really just kind of figuring out how to trace based off of an image, but I'm going to go ahead and make mine 20 by 20 just because I like nice round numbers. So I'll go ahead and type 20 feet, enter to find that next corner. Do the same thing coming across here, 20 feet. And then we're just doing the lines of the walls right now. So we're gonna find kind of this intersection here. So we're not grabbing the front porch just yet, we're just focusing on the walls. So again, I'm not super sure where this one is. So either, you can click once you get close to the corner, or now that I'm close to the corner, I see down in my measurement box on my bottom left, it's 15 feet 5 7/8 of an inch. I'm gonna go ahead and make that 15 feet 6, again, just because I like nice round numbers. I'll type 15 foot 6, enter. But again, if you want to just kind of click your corners, totally fine. The only thing that we're really worried about here is just making sure that all of your lines are parallel, coplanar, all that good stuff. Start to bring it across and find this corner. Looks like it's about 10.5 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and type 10 foot 6. And then here, whenever I get to this corner, it's a bit tricky because I want to keep my parallel lines. I want everything to be on the axis, but it's kind of hard for me to know exactly where it's going to line up with where I started over here at this initial endpoint. This is when I can start to use the inference engine, so SketchUp's cues to help me model accurately. If I hover over this endpoint that I want to be in line with, and then I slowly start to move my cursor back towards my other corner. It might be hard to see on my screen, maybe you can see it on your own. These red dots are kind of showing up to kind of let me know that, okay, SketchUp is recognizing that I'm using this endpoint as a point that I want to be in line with. So if I'm just keeping those red dots as I come across, then when I get back to my line being on that green axis, it's still lined up with where that initial endpoint was. My red dots are there telling me, yes, you are in line with that endpoint. It is going to be a straight line. So then I'll click, and then I get back to my starting point, and yep, it is red. It's on that red axis, so everything is nice and straight for me. So just know that you can hover over endpoints, lines to kind of help you get that accurate modeling, making sure that everything is lined up with each other. And then once you get back to your starting point, just click to finish, and you should be left with a face between all of those lines that we just created. And you'll see how our face that we just created is kind of glitchy. That's just SketchUp's way of letting me know, hey, you've got two faces that are directly on top of each other. Not a problem for us because our image is all in a group, so it's not actually touching each other. The geometry is still kind of separate from each other since some of it's in a group. But that's what that kind of glitchiness is. I think it's called Z-planing. Just letting you know that there are two surfaces stacked right on top of each other. Okay, step number 5. We're going to make this face that we just created, we're going to make it transparent. Because we're going to start to trace the interior walls, but how are we supposed to trace them if we can't really see them because there's a face on top of it? So you can turn your faces transparent one of two ways. You can either come up to View in your menu bar, hover over Face Style, and a couple options will show up for you. And if you would hit X-ray, that'll turn all of your faces into X-ray mode, so it'll start to be transparent and let you see through. Yeah?
So I click this big rock because mine didn't become a face.
Okay, let me do that again, just in case. Oops, I just did a little bit too much of the undo. Okay, so we said 2 ways to get your face transparent. The first way is to just go up to View, hover over Face Style, and click on X-ray, and that turns all of your faces into X-ray mode, and X-ray is kind of its way of being transparent. So now you can see that all of the faces, even including the face of the image, turned X-ray. The other way to do it is through your Styles panel, which we've looked at a little bit, not too much yet. Your Styles panel should be on your default tray. So on here, if we go over to the Edit tab, and so we've been here before whenever we turned our edges by axis so that we can see, make sure that all of our lines are parallel. What we're going to do this time, you see all these little boxes up here, this kind of tells you what type of settings you're on. So right now, the first one is edge settings. We want to go to the next one, which is your face settings. And then right here we also have the X-ray button, so if I click on the X-ray there, it'll turn everything into that see-through mode. So the styles panel gives you all of the control over the style of your objects. That whenever we went up to view and the edge style and the face style, they have a couple of the same settings that we have in the styles panel, but the styles panel is really going to give you all of the options that you have. So whichever way you did it, we just want to make sure that we are in X-ray mode now. And now we're going to offset the perimeter walls, so we're going to create the thickness of our walls. And our walls are 6 inches. I'm just going to tell you that. So we're going to grab the offset tool, hover on this face to grab all of the edges here, click once and start to pull inward, type 6, enter, to offset all of those edges 6 inches inward, and that's creating the thickness of our walls. So now that's separated our face into the walls and everything inside. Okay, now we're going to go back to the styles panel to change the edge color. Because black lines might be kind of hard to read whenever you have a black and white drawing. So you might want to change your edge settings so that they're nice and bright and you can see them a little bit easier. So we're going to make them red. So back in our styles panel, we're going to go to the edge settings. And down here in this color, we're going to keep it all the same. We want all the edges to be the same color, but instead of black, I'll click on the little black square here and that pulls up a color wheel for you. I want it to be red. So you can either, you can really choose whatever color you want to make it easy for you to see. Maybe if you wanted that bright blue, or bring it over to the red. You have the option to use this color wheel to find your color, or if you click this drop down that says color wheel, you've got the different options. Like maybe you want RGB. I'm going to go ahead and click RGB. And then red, turn it all the way up on the R. And then G and B, green and blue, stay at 0. And that can also find your red color. So just whichever way you prefer, if you know your exact RGB that you want, or if you just want to use the color picker to pick a random color. Once we do that, we hit OK, all of my edges have turned red, the color that I just specified. So now I can see all of my edges a little bit easier. All of these in here still stayed black because that's just from the image. That's not SketchUp actually being able to read edges of the image. So it's only turning actual edges to that red color, and I can see a bit easier now. So now we can trace the interior walls, and we'll use the inference engine to align the interior walls with exterior walls where appropriate. And we'll keep the interior walls 6 inches thick by either copying or offsetting the second face of the walls. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and choose this point here just because I know that this interior wall is lining up with this exterior wall. So I'll grab my pencil tool and just start tracing over the walls. Looks like that one's going to about 5 feet. And then I'll bring it across to hit the exterior wall. And now, rather than just tracing the lines of the other face of this interior wall, I'm just going to copy my lines or offset my lines so that I maintain that 6-inch thickness. So I'm going to grab the 2 lines that I just created, grab my offset tool, and offset them 6 inches to create that the thickness of that interior wall. Yeah?
Sorry, I can't find the edge setting under Styles tab.
Okay. And after this wall, I'm gonna use that same inference engine, being able to line up with the lines that I already created. So if I hover over this endpoint here and start to slowly move my cursor, well, I can't see it very well, I can barely see it, but there are those little green dots letting me know that I am staying along the green axis. So I know that I'm staying in line with that line that I'm referencing until I go and find the edge. And now that kind of gives me my starting point for that next wall. So I'll click here, start to bring it down. Looks like that's about 5'6". And then bring it across to my other wall. And then I'll do the same thing with the offset, grabbing these two lines. Grab your offset tool and give the wall that 6-inch thickness. Then we've got one more wall here. Looks like we're going to start at the midpoint. Bring it down to connect to your other wall. And then I'm just going to copy this line 6 inches over to give us the thickness of that wall. And then now we're going to want to clean up any lines that are left over, so that we can have all of our walls, both exterior and interior, we want them to be one continuous face so that we can just extrude it all up together at once. Because right now, I've got some lines separating different walls from each other, so I've got lots of individual faces. So I can just grab the eraser tool, I just hit E on my keyboard, and I'm just going to clean up some of those extra lines. And you'll notice that even though I drew this long line as one line, SketchUp can tell that it's intersecting with some other lines, so it allows you to just erase individual parts of the line as long as they're being segmented elsewhere. So it's not going to erase your entire line, it'll only erase the area that's between two connecting points. So I'll just go ahead and clean up some of these other ones. And let's see if I got them all. If I click on this face, is it one continuous face now? It looks like it is. Yeah.
You said you had to click on the line before you offset it, or no?
I believe with lines you do. Let me see. Yeah, with lines you do have to select the lines first. If you're
When I try to offset it, it just offsets the whole area, not just the line.
Yeah, if you have a surface between your lines, then you don't have to click on anything. The offset tool can just kind of automatically detect all of those lines without having to select them. But if you've just got one or two lines, SketchUp is going to make you select those lines before you offset. Is it working better if you select them first?
Well, I'm just trying to do like the closet, but when I offset it, it offsets the whole.
Okay. And then now we're on, we're still on step number 8. We erased any lines to clean up that continuous face. And then go ahead and return your face settings and uncheck X-ray so that everything is opaque again. So if you went from View, Face Style, and uncheck X-ray there, or over in your Styles panel, over to your face settings and uncheck X-ray there. And then let's also go ahead and change our edges back to black. So over on your edge settings, still in the styles panel, down on color, click that little red box, and take it back to black. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and, oh, you know what, I completely skipped extruding the walls. I don't think I told you to extrude the walls in here. So let's go ahead and do that. This continuous face that we just created, go ahead and use the push-pull tool to grab that face and start to extrude our walls up. Let's go ahead and make them 10 feet. So I'll take 10 feet, enter. By cleaning up all those edges, we were able to just extrude all the walls up at once. Let's also just talk a little bit more about kind of our styles options with the edges and the face settings. There are quite a few things that you can do here. On the edge settings, we really only played with the color at this point. So we've seen that we can change all the colors of your edges. And in a previous assignment, we saw that we can, instead of making them all the same, we can do it by axis. And so that lets us just see where our lines are parallel to different axes. We've also got a few options for the thickness of the different lines that you see. So it might be a little bit difficult to tell, but right now, since I have profiles enabled, the profile looks a little bit thicker of a line than some of our lines that are inside. If I change it from 2 to maybe 5, then you'll see that all of those profile lines got just a little bit thicker. We could also turn that to 2. We can also thicken up our endpoints. So if I enable that, it looks like the default was 9. And so now you see all of my endpoints thickened up a bit. And you can even do things like adding back edges so that we can see all of the edges, even if they're hidden. So it kind of turns them more into almost a wireframe type of look. So really any sort of customization that you would want with your edges, you should be able to come into these edge settings and just kind of play around and see what's most helpful for you while you're modeling. Turn those back edges back off, turn my endpoints back off. And then same thing with the face settings. You've got a couple different options with these. You can look at your model all in a wireframe mode, so it just kind of turns the faces transparent, and you're seeing all the edges at once. Got a couple different options, and you'll just see as you click through it, different things start to appear and change. And then of course there was that X-ray mode that we looked at that kind of gives a translucent effect. So those are just kind of like some stylistic options you might choose to help you along. It might be a preference thing, or as we saw, we could turn our edges a different color just so that to help us see a little bit better. Take this back to where we were. Okay, so now we are going to add the porch and the stairs. So we are going to start with porch. I'll grab my pencil tool by clicking L on my keyboard. And then we want it to align with our walls here, so just go ahead and start on an endpoint here. SketchUp will let you know when you're at the endpoint. And then use that inference engine again to see this endpoint that we want to align to. Start to slowly bring your cursor over and you'll see those dotted lines appearing. Hi, no worries. You too. And then when we reach our point over here, we're on that green axis, so it's a nice straight line, and we're also in line with that endpoint you just referenced. And bring it across, and it should be a nice straight line for you. And a face will fill in because we have 4 edges. And then I'll go ahead and trace the stairs here. So again, I'm going to start on an endpoint, just making sure that we're accurate and things are aligning to each other. Right, and if I look down at my measurement box, it looks like I'm close to a foot here, so I'm going to go ahead and type 1 foot, enter. Start to come across, and it looks like I'm at about 3.5 feet, so I'll go ahead and make it exact. 3'6", and then back up. And then that face filled in. We have 2 stairs here, so I'll just find the midpoint and bring that across. So now we should have 3 separate faces, the porch, the second stair, and the first stair. It's a little bit hard to see because of that Z-planing. But I've got 3 separate surfaces. And we learned this a couple weeks ago at this point, but for some reason our back faces are showing up with that kind of bluish gray color. So I just want to flip them over to get all the white sides facing up. So if I right click on that face and reverse faces, that'll put the front side or the normal side up. I'm just going to do it to each of these faces. So the front side is facing up. And then we want to use the push-pull tool to extrude the porch and the second stair up 1 foot. So I will grab my push-pull. Oops, I accidentally selected the wrong face. There we go. Push-pull, I'm gonna bring this up 1 foot. And then I want this second stair to also be 1 foot. Notice if you double click on that face, it'll automatically go to 1 foot. It'll go whatever you just did. So SketchUp can kind of remember what you've just done, and if you double click, it'll extrude it up that same distance. And then this first stair here, we want it to be 6 inches. So you can either start to pull it up and type 6 foot, enter, or you can use your inference engine and hover over this edge to find the midpoint, because we know that we did that first step 1 foot, so 6 inches would be at the midpoint, so I can just align it to the midpoint. Okay, now we're going to add the doors. We're on step number 10. We're going to locate the starting points of the doors by creating guidelines that are 4 inches from the adjacent walls. So we had a front door here, doors going into each of these rooms, and then we did have an opening to get into this closet. It's a bit harder to see now that we're not on X-ray, but if I do click on that X-ray, you can see where your doors and then opening were. So I'm going to locate each of the doors 4 inches away from an adjacent wall. So to create guidelines, we use our tape measure tool. And then if we orbit around to the front face here, I'm gonna grab this edge here. This is my adjacent wall edge. And remember, you can click anywhere other than the end point and start to pull over to create that guideline. And I'm gonna type 4, enter. And that's gonna be the starting point for that door. So then if I grab my rectangle tool, I hit R on my keyboard, I'll go find that intersection of where the guideline hits this bottom edge. And SketchUp should tell you when you're at the intersection. Click once to start, and start to bring your rectangle up. And let's see here, the assignment says our doors are gonna be 2'8" wide by 7 foot tall. So I'm gonna type 2'8", 7 foot, enter. And that should give you a rectangle for where your door goes. So let's do that for each of the other doors here. Grab your tape measure tool. Use the adjacent walls line here to pull over 4 inches. Grab the rectangle tool. Find that intersection. And create your 2'8", 7 foot, enter door. Swivel around to this one, tape measure, grab anywhere on the line except for the end point to create that guideline. 4, enter for 4 inches away. R on your keyboard for rectangle. Find your starting point at that intersection. And 2'8", 7 foot, enter. And then finally we want to do the opening for our closet. The assignment says that we'll still create that 4-inch guideline away from the wall. And then our rectangle here, our opening is going to be 3'10" wide by 7 feet tall. So T for tape measure, grab that line, 4 inches, grab the rectangle tool, find that intersection, and this time we're doing 3'10", 7 foot. We've now got the outlines for each of our doors. And then step number 11, we'll do similarly, but just for the window this time. So the window was on this front face. So we're gonna orbit around to the front of your model here. We use the tape measure tool again to create ourselves a guideline to know where to start that window. We'll create the guideline 2 feet away from the right side of the front door. So I'll grab the right side of my front door, this edge, click once and start to bring your cursor over, type 2 feet, enter. And then we want the top of the window to align to the top of the door. So I'll grab my rectangle tool and I want it to align to the top here. So I'm going to find the end point at the top of my door and then use that inference engine to start to pull it over across the red axis until you find the intersection between that reference point and your guideline. And then we're going to create a window that is 3 foot wide by 4 foot tall. So click here to start the top left corner of your window. Start to bring it across here. We're doing 3 foot wide by 4 feet tall, so 3 foot, 4 foot, enter. And that'll be where your window goes. Then from here, delete all the guidelines. So remember to do that, we go to edit, and delete guides. Alright, step number 12. We'll cut the door and the window openings. So we're just creating openings, we're not gonna build actual doors for this assignment. We're just gonna cut through here. So for that, grab your push-pull tool. And this is gonna be similar to when we created our bookcase. We had that arc going across the bottom, and we wanted to push that bottom arc all the way through to create an opening underneath of the bookcase. So we're just gonna do the same thing here. You'll find the surface of your door, click and start to pull it backward, and then SketchUp will tell you when you've hit the back face, and then you click and it should just open right up for you. Or you could also, since we know that the wall thickness is 6 inches, you could just type 6, enter, and it'll cut through for you there. And then we should be able to just double click those other surfaces, because again, SketchUp should remember that we just pulled 6 inches. So if we double click each of these, SketchUp should remember that 6 inch to push through. The last step here, we're on number 13. We're just gonna raise the floor to be at the same height of the porch, because remember we raised our porch up 1 foot, but our interior floor down here is still down below. So we just want that floor to raise up to be level with the porch. You might need to clean up some of those lines again here because I'm not having one continuous space for the floor. So just hit E on your keyboard and clean up some of those lines until your interior floor is just one continuous space. And then we'll be able to use the push-pull tool to raise that floor up. You can either type 1 foot, or you can hover over here to where your porch is, and it'll be aligned flush with that face. Now those should be at the same height. And then if you'd like, you can clean up these lines as well. And that should be it.